Nicely done,
That was
David.
really really good and insightful to hear. I do have a couple of questions. The first one I want to lead off with is why did you get into this field of betrayal trauma?
Well, I knew that going into my clinical work as a therapist, I wanted to work with couples. That part was just obvious to me. I chose marriage and family therapy as a degree because I wanted to work with marriages specifically. Um, if you're working with marriages, you're going to be presented with this. It just happened, and I found very early on that I wasn't equipped to help people in the right way. That motivated me. I would devote a lot of effort to training and study to get a little bit more versed in working with betrayal, working with infidelity. And it was in that process. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Kevin Skinner. He's a practitioner in Utah County who really trained me in the concept of that this is a trauma. So that changed everything for me.
Wow. Okay. You were mentioning recovering from betrayal trauma and couples working on it together and stuff. Or you even said something about if people have to be willing to share whether they're not in love anymore and that kind of thing. What about the person who is still in love? How do they recover? If there's going to be a split, which it sounds like there is sometimes, how does that person who's like, oh my gosh, this was what I wanted, what I thought it was, and now it's gone. How do they move on?
Well, I think the answer to that is that both people were probably in love and both people lost it. And so maybe there's a difference in sequence of when that happened. And so that needs to be taken into account. First of all, I don't necessarily think that betrayal in and of itself is about love. People betray for a lot of different reasons, and people will say, well, you must not have loved them if you did this thing. Well, I don't necessarily believe that. I obviously think they need to show their love differently, but it doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't love. But if I always say it would be great if the Beatles had it right, all you need is love. They were wrong. But to your key question, I guess, Rex, is now you're going to have to face with a grieving process. If this was something you desperately wanted and it didn't work out, you're not only going to have to heal from the trauma itself, there's going to have to be a grieving process. And grieving is complex, and there's no timeline associated with grieving. There are some things that we can use that are helpful, but really grieving just has to take its place as it comes for most people.
I like that you use the word grieving, because that has something that is a word that's helped me deal with just past traumas in my life. Is grieving them. Like, okay, that wasn't a good thing, but it happened, and now it's time to move on.
There was a loss. Yeah. And that's the important piece of grieving. And said, I share this a while. I lost my mother 3 years ago here in a month or so. And I remember speaking at her funeral saying, I hope she wouldn't want us to be sad, but I personally hope people are sad, because that means she mattered to us. And to grieve a loss like a marriage, that means that marriage mattered. And that's an okay thing. You put a lot of stock and time into that. It's one of the biggest things that you would ever do in your life, is to bring somebody by choice into your life and create a life and a family and a future together. And to lose that's worth grieving.
I like that parallel you draw there, because I know what it's like to lose a mother. I lost mine 16 years ago. But drawing that parallel makes a lot of sense. So thanks for sharing that. How does trauma, I can already imagine it's going to be kind of an interesting answer, but how does trauma affect people? What does it do?
Sure. We can look at the DSM that gives us a lot of that, but
let me be specific. How does emotional trauma affect people?
Well, it affects the way that we view the world. It affects the way we view our partner, in this case of betrayal trauma, and other people, and it especially affects the way we view ourselves. I've had soldiers tell me things like, well, because my convoy was blown up by an Iraqi jihadist, all brown people are bad. And that's certainly not true, but that's what their trauma has taught them, because it changed the way they view the world and other people. Similarly, with betrayal trauma, what it either creates or confirms is that I am bad. I wasn't enough. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't sexy enough. I wasn't a good enough partner, parent, whatever it was in their life. And so it either creates or adds to already a belief system about themselves. But that doesn't even speak to like the emotions. I mean, just the feelings of anxiety. The DSM talks about trauma showing depression-like symptoms, detachment or estrangement from others, inability to feel positive emotions, increased anger and irritation, the reactivity of it all. There's a whole host of physiological, emotional, and cognitive changes that happen in trauma.
How does somebody with that trauma get to a point where they maybe even recognize, gosh, maybe I need help? How do they get to that point?
I think most people get to that point when their efforts that they've tried or haven't worked for them. That's usually when people call. I mean, I just took a call this morning from a couple, and well, we've been working at this for a few weeks and it just hasn't been going. And for them, it was only a few weeks, fortunately. Some people, it's years that we tried to work on this and it hasn't gotten there. And so usually that's when people have to recognize my efforts aren't getting anywhere. We need some additional support.
Well, do people, it seems like a lot of this, from what I've heard on the show and over these last few seasons, is that a lot of this too comes from a family of origin, where sometimes people choose to be with people who traumatize them the way their family traumatized them. Is that something you see a lot, or? Yeah,
and there's some theory that suggests this. I mean, if you're familiar with this, a good study is Imago relationship therapy. Imago talks about how we create a composite image in our mind of our caretakers, and then that's the filter from which we select our partners, for better or for worse. So I think it's an interesting theory. It explains why a daughter of an alcoholic marries an alcoholic, as one of many examples. But there's some additional psychology that goes along to it that suggests, that goes along with that, hey, if it happened in my past, maybe I can fix it in my generation, which will help heal all of that past stuff that I had to deal with. It's a thinking error, a cognitive distortion, we might call it. But that's, if you get to the brass tacks of what people are thinking, sometimes maybe not even thinking is the right word. Subconsciously, that's being driven for them. It starts to make a little bit of sense. So I don't know if that's what you're speaking to, but we can definitely, I mean, I a good old Utah State University Family Studies program genogram and a BYU MFHD program genogram. I do a genogram with every client because I'm looking for some of those patterns to see what might show up in today's relationships. We know that they're going to show up in some way. Yeah. There's a shout out to our schools there, Dave.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. USU and BYU.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've really enjoyed this. Did you guys have any more questions?
Oh, super helpful, Dave. Yeah,
I could talk for a while.
Yeah, I'm convinced we need to bring you back on.
I'm presenting on this topic at the UMFT conference in March, so I don't know if you're going to attend that or not, but I'll be there for that. This is really kind of, I've had this material with me for years, and I'm just kind of really focusing on getting it out to the masses a little bit more. So that's why we're running some groups and presenting conferences, creating some online content around it. So,
good for you, David. Man, it's sure needed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dave. I'm going to sign off here.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.